Okay, we learned Le'ilu Nishmat, Avigdor Chayavram ben Rachel Leah Mer Tzvi, Shamash Deha ben Aliyah. I'm going to put on the screen the Mishnah that we're dealing with. Here it is. Okay, and I'm just going to point out one line that we're going to talk about for a couple of minutes, and that's this line right here that I'm going to highlight. Actually, put it in red. Im ein kemach ein Torah, im ein Torah ein kemach. If there's no flour, meaning there is no parnasa, there is no income, no food, ein Torah. We discussed that at length last week, meaning that it's very hard to focus, to concentrate, to work on Torah when a person's very hungry. They have to worry about feeding their family. They can't focus. The alternate is also true. Ein Torah ein kemach. If a person isn't learning Torah, then there won't be any sustenance. There won't be any food. Now, actually, what we talked about a little bit, I want to mention just a couple more things about even though we talked about last week on that first statement, but I have to first share with you an unbelievable story that happened this week. Because it's Elul, and keep my eyes open always for interesting stories. This one happened with me. There was a particular Facebook post by an individual who I commented on the post. And the person who I don't know commented back to me very nicely, but like, it's better you don't attack, better to state facts. And I said, I'm not attacking, I am stating facts. I think you misunderstood. And we went back on that post back and forth a couple times, 3-4 times. He was very strong about one way and I was very strong another way, but very respectful. So he sent me a message on Facebook Messenger. He said, you're the kind of person I want to be friends with. I said, what does that mean? He said, you disagree with me, but you do it in a very respectful way, and that's very rare. I said, well, my pleasure. I said, I try my best to be respectful, except for idiots. And then I can give them over the head. I don't care, especially people I don't know who live in Bombay, for all I know. And so he friended me, and we started chatting a little bit. And I thought he lived in Chutz La'aretz. Turns out he lives here. And he was misinformed about something. He wanted to do something in the army. He's an older gentleman. He's 35. He's past army age. And he mentioned that Nefesh B'Nefesh told him that he's too old to do what's called Shlav Bet. That's for people who are over army age, but it's they have certain, like a short-term program you do, and then you do Biluim. I said, it's not true. I know for a fact. I have friends who are in their upper 30s, early 40s, and have been able to go Shlav Bet. And he was like over the moon. I put him in touch with these guys. And my assumption is it's going to work out for him. And I told him this is possibly the whole reason that we ended up chatting online at that point. And then you move further is that his closest friend in the world turns out to be someone I helped years ago in a totally different approach, totally different thing. And which was itself was a crazy situation. But the point being that when you keep your eyes open, you do the right thing. Hashem is there to make you in the right place at the right time, to help somebody, to whatever it might be. It's always good to try to do the best you can, because remembering that we are shliach of Hashem, we are the messengers of Hashem every single day for something. Maybe sometimes it's insignificant in our eyes, and sometimes it's very major. Maybe they'll end up in the army. We shall see. Going back to the Ein Kemach, Ein Torah, that there's no food, there's no Torah. I want to put another slide here. I'll show you where it is. Okay. You'll find very often in Tanakh that food, drink are compared to Torah. Look what it says here. This is the Tana de Eliyahu Zuta. Yistakel adam be'atzmo. A person should look at himself, do a little introspection. And understand, know, that the words of Torah are comparable to, not comparable, they are compared to water and bread. What's the connection between bread and water and Torah? To teach you, just to teach us that the person cannot exist without bread and water, even for one day. We're not talking about Obviously, there's fast days and stuff, but meaning in a perpetual situation. It's impossible to live without Torah even for a moment. Now, that's a pretty broad statement. I mean, like that means when I finish teaching, when I go and I sit down, like do some Shabbat cleaning, or I'm going to go and do something shtuyot, or go shopping, whatever it might be, I'm not dealing in Torah at the moment. So does that mean I can't exist? So what it means, we already talked about the idea of what does it mean Torah on a consistent basis. So we said that the bare minimum is saying Shema in the morning and Shema in the evening, and that's considered you learn Torah all day long. That's really getting by at the barest of barest minimums. But it also means living a way of Torah life. When a person, how they act outside their home, how they act in the store, how they act on a bus, how they act talking to people on the phone, all their interactions with themselves, with other people, with Hashem, everything has to be al pi derech haTorah, which is what we saw last week when we looked at this slide. The word halacha, which is the Hebrew word for Jewish law, the word halicha, walking, is the same shorish, the same hey lamed chaf, that indicates the idea the way we go through this world has to be based on halacha. We'll come to that in a minute. Let's go back. I want to go back to the Mishnah. I said I'm not going to spend a lot of time in the second half of the Mishnah, which is over here. I'm going to read it. Actually, I'm just going to read it in English this time. Starting with here. Start right there. Okay. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, and then we're going to move on to the next Mishnah. He used to say, this is Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's tale, one whose wisdom exceeds his deeds, to what may he be compared? To a tree whose branches are numerous, but whose roots are few. So that when the wind comes, it uproots it and overturns it. So you have this big tree, lots of branches, lots of leaves, lots of everything. But a wind, even a decent wind, can just easily, normal wind can easily push it over because the roots, it's not rooted in the ground well. So too, a person may have a lot of wisdom, but he doesn't act on it, doesn't do mitzvot. It's the same idea. It says, he shall be like a bush in the desert, which does not sense the coming of good. It is set in the scorched places of the wilderness in a barren land without an inhabitant. But one whose deeds exceed his wisdom, to what he be compared. Let's say a person has a decent amount of knowledge, but the way they act and the way they put mitzvot into practice and how they act in life is tremendous, even more so than the actual knowledge they may have. To a tree, what are they compared to? To a tree whose branches are few, but roots are many. So that even if all the winds of the world come and blow upon it, they cannot move it out of place. As it says, he shall be like a tree planted by waters, sending forth its roots by a stream. It does not sense the coming of heat. Its leaves are ever fresh. It has no care in a year of drought. It does not cease to yield fruit. This line, it has no care in a year of drought, meaning that even if there's no official water, no rain, he doesn't have anything to worry about it because he's so rooted, literally and figuratively, in the ground, he has nothing to worry about. I'm going to show you something. One more thing. Share what sound. Share. Oops. Not that. I already shared that. That's not what I want to share. Where is it? Okay, give me 1 second. Let me close that. Huh. Oh, here it is. Make that small. Now, try this again. Share. Here's with sound. Yes. You have a very big tree, very truncated, and it collapsed. This is the visual of that Mishnah. I mean, you could probably visualize it yourself without having me put a 2-second little video on. But in any case, that is, we unfortunately probably all know people like this, that they may sit and learn a lot, but they're, and it's great because learning is very important. It's crucial. But putting it into practice, give you an example. There are people who may come to shul and sit there and learn in the middle of davening, in the middle of repetition of Shemona Esrei, hurry up and fast as they can to daven just so they can sit there and learn. That's not the right way to do it. First of all, it's not permitted to learn during repetition of Shemona Esrei. It's asur. Person's supposed to pay attention, say Amen, say Yeshmir Abba, say everything is supposed to say Baruch Hu Baruch Shemo. That's first of all. And what it's also doing is it marginalizes the Torah, the davening. It says it's not so important to daven. I'm going to learn. Now there are certain situations, extremely rare, probably not existent nowadays, that person who was so engrossed in learning and so into the level of learning that he's actually exempt from doing the basic saying of Shema and Brachot. And that's about it because he's all about learning. It's a very rare individual like that, if there's anyone like that alive today. I don't know. But on the other hand, it's the Torah. On the other hand, we also have to understand, which has to do with the kemach, it has to do with the flour, i.e., a person's livelihood. That you're learning Torah. I don't mean you per se listening, but people in general cannot come at the expense of somebody else. What does that mean? There's a rule in halacha regarding Shabbat. It says, Tehei Shabbatcha chol, make your Shabbat weekday-like. I'll explain. Al titzarech labriot, and don't cause problems for everybody else. What does that mean? You don't make your Shabbat weekday does not mean you don't keep Shabbat. It means that you should eat on Shabbat the kind of food you might eat during the weekday, meaning not as elaborate, as lavish as you might do on Shabbat, without having to go to other people to ask for money to pay for your food. Now, is that true for everybody? What if a person literally has nothing? So we have a responsibility as a community to help people in need, that's for sure. But when it's self-perpetuating, we talked about this last week, that a person decides, look, I'm going to sit and learn. I'm going to rely on everybody else to support me. That goes against halacha. Sorry. It just goes against what everything the Torah stands for. So that from my perspective, there is this ein kemach, ein Torah, is a person who puts himself, this is my opinion, this is my reading of it, didn't see it anywhere. Ein kemach, a person purposefully make sure he doesn't have parnasa, doesn't have an income because he will rely on others. Ein Torah. His Torah is not worth much. Still Torah, still gets a mitzvah for it, but it's tainted from my perspective. So that's the general idea of this Mishnah, that one has to understand priorities, which we're going to see in this next Mishnah in a moment, to be the last Mishnah of Pirke. Understand priorities and to understand that there is a duality, there is a, sorry to say, but the yin yang. There's another word I'm looking for. It'll come to me. That is necessary in all these pairs that was listed for us. Dat and Binah and Chokhmah and everything that we've done until now, this Mishnah. So I'm going to put the next Mishnah, which again is the last Mishnah of the Parak, put on the screen. It's short, but it requires some explanation, more than just some. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you the Mishnah, and before we go into it, we're going to talk about the word that I have in parentheses, ben. Rabbi, now your printings may or may not have that word. Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma Omer. Rabbi Elazar ben Chisma, but if you look in English, it says Rabbi Elazar Chisma. There's no son of. That's what we're going to talk about. Said, Tinin upitche nida hein hen gufei halachot. I'm not going to explain all these in detail. I'm going to come back to them. But the general idea of the bird offerings, again, it's obviously needs explanation. And the calculations regarding Hilchot Nida are the body of halacha, Tkufot the Gematriot, calculation of equinoxes, and it's much more than that. And Gematria, which is the use of Hebrew letters having a numerical value to figure things out. Parparod lechochma are the desserts of wisdom. Now, obviously, this requires quite a bit of understanding. What is it we're talking about here? But in order to understand this, we first have to understand who the author of this Mishnah is. There are two different printings. The more legitimate and accurate appears to be Rabbi Eliezer Chisma, not Rabbi Eliezer, the son of Chisma. So where does that come from? I mean, why? There was no person named Chisma. So let's take a look at okay. Let me make this a little bigger. This is an anecdote that is found in Midrash Rabbah and Vayikra Rabbah. It says as follows. A man, Rabbi Lezer, was asked to um, to lead the davening. He said he can't. I'm going to start here. Kamu panav. He is embarrassed. He was asked to daven. He made it appear that he couldn't lead the davening. So he got embarrassed. It's a Rabbi Akiva Rabon. He went to Rabbi Akiva, his teacher. Amarle, lama fanecha cholaniot. Why do you look so depressed, so despondent? Tanale ovda. So he told him the story that he was asked to daven for the Amud. He was asked to read from the Torah. He said, I can't. He felt bad. Amarle tzavi maradielef. You want me to teach you? Amarle in ilfe. Yes, I want you to teach me. By the way, this ilfe in Aramaic, do you have the word modern day Hebrew? It's actually Aramaic. Ulpana, like your ulpana tzvia. Ulpana comes the word to learn. The Vata Yomin, Azahu Atra. After some time, he went back. This Rabbi Elazar went back to the same location where this incident happened, where he was asked to. No one embarrassed him purposely. He felt bad himself. Amrule, prosal shema, paras. Do whatever. Do something that has to do with davening about Shema, and he did it. Avor lifnei teva. Go daven for the Amud. Be the Chazan. Avar. He did. Amrin, they said, Itchasam Rabbi Elazar. The Kohen le Rabbi Elazar Chisma. It says that he became Chasim. I'll explain what that means. And therefore they called him Rabbi Elazar Chisma. What does this mean? That the word Chisma means mechuzak, strengthened. So he went through a difficult time that he felt bad about. He was asked whether it was to do Poris al Hashma, which has to do with something we don't basically do nowadays for davening, or to be the Chazan, and he couldn't do it. And he felt bad about it. What did he do? He didn't sit and wallow in it. He said, you know what? Let me talk to my Rav. Let me figure out what to do. The Rav asked him, you want me to teach you? Rabbi Akiva asked him. He said, yes. And then he was able to overcome that. And by doing so, the Gemara referred to him, or the Midrash referred to him as Rabbi Elazar Chisma. The word chasum means like shut down, like a machsom, right? Like a barrier. But here it doesn't mean that. Rashi, other commentators, I forgot who said that it means in this case, lashon chizuk, that he was able to chazek to strengthen himself in spite of the fact that he had a lack of knowledge in something, and therefore he went out of his way to take care of it and learn. So I'll tell you something briefly that I told years ago. I know that. 3 days ago, Sfaradim, we started to say slichot. It's a time period of the year that I always look forward to. This is my 12th year now of doing it. I very much look forward to the first. For those of you who don't know, when you do Sfaradi slichot, is a tremendous amount of interaction. There's almost zero downtime of just sitting and listening to somebody. There's a lot of back and forth, and people switch off. He starts this one, he starts this one. For the first 2 years of my saying slichot, even if someone pointed to me okay, you say the next line, I didn't do it. I didn't want to. I felt like I was still new at this, and very much like Rabbi Elazar Chisma, I don't know. It's not. I'll just be an observer. And I had a student who was an Ola Chadasha, and was very quiet. And one day she came to me and said, I raised my hand in class today to ask a question. And I was so thrilled. She was very proud of herself, and I was so thrilled that she did that. So that she went way out of her comfort zone. Her Hebrew was okay, but she went way out of her comfort zone to do that. The next day, I went to Shul. It was during the time Slichot this happened. And I started, when they asked me, I did my thing. And now I'm very proactively participating in Slichot. What's the point to that? Very similar idea. Sometimes you feel like you're going to shy away from something because it's out of your comfort zone, and you just stay away from it. On the other hand, if you learn from someone like Rabbi Elazar Chisma, that if you're out of your comfort zone, you can, if it's worthwhile to you, it's important, learn to grow and to change. And therefore they called him Rabbi Elazar Chisma, the one who was Lehit Chazek. He strengthened himself to get to do that. Okay, so now let's take a look at the next Mishnah. Oh, oh, that was it right there. Okay. So we need to understand first the topics the Mishnah talks about. I might not get much farther than just explain this Mishnah, and we may stop, and then because I don't want to start getting to everything today. Let's talk about 1, 2, 3, 4 topics that are here. Number 1 is kinin. Kinin means nests, N-E-S-T, like the bird nest, kansipor. Pasuk says in Parshat Ki Tetzei, which we'll read shortly, Ki karedecha kansipor baderech b'choletz. If you come across a bird in its nest and you see that there's an egg there, or little chicks, and then there's the whole mitzvah, it's called shiluach hakan, to send away the mother bird, to shoo the mother bird away. When a woman would have a baby at the time of Beit HaMikdash, and also when someone had something called ziva, which is a form of a gonorrheal flow, and there's no comparison. Don't jump at me and say that. What are you comparing gonorrhea with that? God forbid. There are 2 times the Torah requires certain korban to be brought. If you want to understand why, you have to learn Masechet Kinim. And it says that there were 2 birds that were brought in each case. One was for a chatat, a sin offering, and one was for an olah, a burnt offering. Okay. Now, Rabbi Elazar Chisma tells us that this is like some of the fundamental area of halacha. What is he talking about? What the second statement he makes is that Pitre Nida, the calculations of Hilchot Nida, woman having her period, when it's a what's called a veset kvua, veset she'ena kvua, what's a fixed period, irregular period, when they have to be concerned that she's going to get her period when she goes to the mikvah, all these things also fall in this category of gufei halachot. Again, big question mark. Why? I mean, why don't you say Hilchot Shabbat? Right? Hilchot Kashrut. Those are gigantic areas of halacha. Hilchot Brachot, which is the Rabbanan, but for the 99%. But still, say that, what is this kinim and pitrei nida? That's question number 1. Part 2. The second half of the Mishnah has to do with called Tkufot and Gematria. Tkufot do mean time periods. Like we're right now in the Tkufat Kayitz. We're the time period of the summer, at least in the northern hemisphere. Tkufot in this particular case means, as he says here, calculation of the equinoxes, the vernal equinox, the autumnal equinox, etc., and Gematria. Most people are familiar with the Gematria being Aleph is 1, Bet is 2, Gimel is 3, and using Gematria are called Paraot of Chochmah. Those are called the dessert of wisdom. Now, again, the second question is, how do you compare this concept of calculating the equinox? Next week, we're going to get more into depth. I'm going to show you some stuff, mathematical, not understanding it, but just to get an idea of calculating what's called the molad. The molad is not the first sighting of the new moon. So the moon is a specific spot and begins its cycle again relative to the earth. How do they calculate? How is that calculated? And you take that on one hand, that's dessert of wisdom. And you also have paparot, which you also have gematriot. Okay, you can say the name Yaakov is this, and then gematria that, and I can compare it. This is just very, very, lots of questions in this Mishnah. Again, just to repeat, the first half of the Mishnah, why he chose those 2 specifically as being examples of gufei halachot, which I put in bold here, what I call body of halacha. I don't like that particular translation, but like it's the critical part. It's the main meal, so to speak. And the other things are dessert. What's he trying to tell us here? So I'm going to put it off till next week, Bezrat Hashem, to finish to talk about this, because this part I want to have for hopefully after September 1st. Some people are back from vacation. I know some people are not around, and get a little bit more into depth to understand that. But in the meantime, we are closing in on the end of Parak Gimel, and we have, which puts us halfway through Pirke Avot. Not physically halfway, because there are certain prakim that 3 is much longer than a couple other prakim, but at least as far as numbers, we're halfway done with Pirke Avot. We still have a good couple of years to go, so don't go anywhere yet. So in the meantime, have a wonderful day, and a Shabbat Shalom to everybody.